At the height of summer, a city of 4 million faced a countdown. In 90 days, every tap would run dry. Police prepared to guard 200 public water points. Emergency plans rationed 6.6 gallons per person, barely enough to survive. The world called this scenario Day Zero. Cape Town almost became its first victim. But what does it actually look like when a modern city runs out of water? And why are more than 20 cities now racing against the same fate? Across Cape Town, 200 water collection sites dotted the city map, each designed to serve around 20,000 people every day. As taps shut off in homes, these points became the new center of daily life. Residents queued for hours, often before dawn, carrying plastic containers, buckets, or anything that could hold water. Each person was entitled to 25 liters, about 6.6 gallons, for everything: drinking, cooking, washing, and cleaning. The ration was strict, and the rules were posted at every site. The collection points were set up in open spaces, such as schoolyards, sports fields, and parking lots chosen for their access to major water mains or for ease of tanker delivery. Long snaking queues formed behind temporary fencing, with lanes marked out to keep the flow moving. At the entrance, city workers and volunteers checked IDs to confirm residency and keep track of daily allocations. There were no official ration cards, just a manual log and the watchful eyes of staff. Inside the secure area, multiple taps lined up along metal manifolds, each one dispensing the precious daily allowance. Water flowed in from storage tanks, filled either by the city's remaining pressurized mains or by fleets of trucks making constant trips from central depots. Families collected their share, then made the journey home, sometimes repeating the process for elderly relatives or neighbors unable to stand in line. Every aspect of the operation was calculated. With 4 million people to serve, the system needed to deliver nearly 100 million liters a day, half by direct mains, half by truck. At peak hours, a single site might distribute water to 2,000 people every hour. For many, the daily queue became a test of endurance and patience, a new ritual in a city forced to adapt overnight. Uniformed police stood watch at every collection point, their presence a daily reminder that the city's water crisis was also a test of civil order. Security forces, including SAPS officers, Metro Police, and military support, were tasked with managing crowds, checking identification, and controlling access to water. Temporary fencing and crowd control barriers marked the perimeter, with officers stationed at entry lanes to verify residency and count containers. Vehicles were stopped at makeshift roadblocks, limiting the risk of people hauling away more than the allowed share. Security was visible at every turn. In neighborhoods where private boreholes and rainwater tanks offered a buffer, residents faced a different reality. Private security firms patrolled the gates of affluent estates, guarding wells and tanks against theft or intrusion. Inside, some families continued to water gardens or fill pools, sparking resentment from those forced to queue for hours. Tension simmered as stories spread of water being sold on the black market or quietly diverted to favored businesses. Hospitals prepared for the worst. Dr. Dlamini, overseeing emergency care at Groot Schuur Hospital, reviewed protocols for water rationing on surgical wards and infection control. Backup tanks and boreholes were tested, and staff drilled on how to stretch every liter. Schools, too, braced for disruption. Principals weighed shortened days, closed bathrooms, and the logistics of trucking and water just to keep children in class. Hospitals and schools ran drills and plans simultaneously. In the townships, residents like Sibusiso waited in line before dawn, wary of theft and the risk of violence erupting when patience ran thin. For many, the daily queue was more than an inconvenience. It exposed the city's deepest fault lines, where access to water and to security was never evenly shared. Reservoir levels tell only part of the story. As water drops toward the bottom of a dam, the engineering challenges mount. Intakes that once sat deep below the surface become exposed, sucking in air and sediment. Pumps, designed to work with plenty of water above them, begin to struggle. With less submergence, they risk cavitation, tiny vapor bubbles forming and collapsing inside the machinery, causing vibration, metal fatigue, and, if left unchecked, catastrophic failure. Operators monitor gauges for warning signs, the drop in pressure, the telltale rattle that means a pump is running outside its safe range. Even before the last water is gone, treatment plants face their own limits. Each facility is built to handle a minimum flow. Drop below that, and the chemistry stops working as intended. Sedimentation tanks cannot settle out fine particles, filters clog more quickly, and chemical dosing becomes unstable. Water drawn from the muddy lower layers of a reservoir often carries higher levels of algae, metals, and organic material, pushing treatment systems to their edge. By the time storage falls to around 13.5%, the city's main plants can no longer guarantee safe, reliable output at scale. The system is not yet dry, but it is no longer operable for normal distribution. At that threshold, the switch flips. Full pressure cannot be maintained, and the network must be shut down for most users, preserving what is left for hospitals, critical sites, and emergency distribution points. Water systems depend on pressure to keep contaminants out. When pressure drops, whether from drought, leaks, or throttling to save supply, the entire network becomes vulnerable. Without enough force pushing water through the pipes, even a small crack can let in dirty groundwater, sewage, or bacteria from the soil. In Cape Town, engineers watched gauges fall below safe limits, knowing that the risk wasn't just running dry, but running dirty. Low pressure can cause backflow, where water from outside the pipes gets sucked in through leaks or faulty connections. This is how pathogens and chemicals can enter the system, turning a water shortage into a public health emergency. Regulations require utilities to maintain positive pressure and chlorine levels throughout the network. If either fails, treatment compliance drops, and the city risks outbreaks of diarrheal disease, hepatitis, or worse. That's why authorities often choose to shut down the network before it fully empties. It's safer to ration clean water at controlled points than to let the entire city risk contamination. Partial service, where some taps sputter and others run dry, can be worse than a total cutoff. In that zone, the illusion of access hides invisible threats. For operators, maintaining pressure isn't just about keeping water flowing, it's about keeping water safe. Cape Town's escape from day zero was not the result of a single decision, but a series of drastic measures and a stroke of luck. As dam levels dropped, the city imposed a hard cap, no more than 50 liters per person per day, enforced by pressure management, steep tariffs, and physical flow restrictors installed on homes exceeding limits. Daily water use plummeted from over 1.2 billion liters to around 500 million liters by March 2018, one of the steepest urban demand drops ever recorded. Residents tracked their own consumption with public dashboards and neighborhood water maps, where each household's usage was visible to the entire city. But demand management alone was not enough. In February, farmers in the Elgin-Grabau region, facing their own losses, released millions of liters from their private reservoirs into the city's supply. That voluntary transfer pushed back the day zero forecast by several weeks, buying time as the city scrambled to augment supply. Desalination plants were rushed into service at enormous cost. One permanent facility was budgeted at nearly $1 billion, a third of Cape Town's entire annual budget. Yet these projects delivered only a fraction of daily needs and often lagged behind schedule. Then in June, the winter rains returned. Dams began to refill. By September, storage climbed near 70%, and the immediate threat receded. Cape Town had avoided day zero, but not by engineering alone. It took collective sacrifice, agricultural trade-offs, and a dose of good fortune, reminding city leaders that the line between crisis and recovery can be as thin as a single wet season. Cape Town is not alone. Around the world, cities are facing their own countdowns to day zero. In 2019, Chennai's 4 main reservoirs dried up, leaving millions dependent on water tankers and private wells. Queues stretched for hours, and fights broke out at collection points. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, the Cantareira system, the main reservoir for 20 million people, dropped to just 5% capacity in 2015. Some neighborhoods received water only a few hours each day. Melbourne, once reliant on steady rainfall, now enforces permanent water-saving rules after the Millennium Drought forced the city to rethink supply and demand. Mexico City, sinking as aquifers are overdrawn, struggles to provide reliable service to its sprawling neighborhoods. Some districts receive water only by weekly truck delivery. In the American Southwest, the Colorado River supports 40 million people, but Lake Mead has dropped to record lows, triggering mandatory cuts. Los Angeles, the nation's second largest city, imports up to 85% of its water from distant sources, snowpacks, rivers, and reservoirs that are shrinking under climate change. Globally, 2 billion people already live under high water stress. By 2030, the world faces a projected 40% gap between sustainable supply and demand. Experts estimate that meeting basic needs and upgrading aging systems will require at least $1 trillion in new investment. Day zero is no longer a warning for one city. It is a looming reality for dozens of urban centers, each with its own fragile math. Right now, more than 20 major cities stand on the edge of their own day zero. As water demand outpaces supply worldwide, crisis planning becomes the new normal. Survival depends on action before the taps run dry. Because when water stops, so does everything else. What would you do?